Hi, everyone. Welcome to eLearnChat, where you always learn something new. I'm Rick Zanotti, and I'm joined today by my good friend from Scotland. She lives in England right now, near London. Lesley Price. How are you, Lesley?
I'm doing good, thank you. Fortunately, the weather has got a bit cooler. You know, last week we had 36, 37 degrees.
That's pretty warm.
Which I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit.
It's called hot.
In the UK, we do everything in Celsius.
Yep, it's hot.
But it was hot.
Probably close to 100 or somewhere right around there.
Yeah.
And Lesley is with www.learnappeal.org.uk. It's a great charity. They do a lot of good work for the third world and others. Definitely check them out. There'll be links below. And we've got Harold in studio running the video switcher and mixer. We've got a great guest today with Danielle Wallace. She'll be joining us in a moment. Here we go. This show is sponsored by Relay Corporation. Digital learning development, media development, corporate video, management consulting, and more. Visit us at www.relate.com. Thanks. And joining us today in that center position of power, as we like to call it, it's Danielle Wallace. She is the Chief Learning Strategist for Beyond the Sky. I love that name. That's a great name. How you doing, Danielle?
It's delightful to be here today.
That's great. Well, we talked a little bit pre-show, and we've been talking a little bit in the last couple of weeks, and you have an interesting background. You've done a lot of different things. You were telling me in your, you look very young. So in your younger youth, you ran a Hawaiian dance school, which I found really interesting. And you have some family from Hawaii, just like my wife is part from Hawaii on our mom's side. What got you into dancing?
I started when I was very little, at 4 years old, and that really sparked my interest, what later became for teaching, and what sparked my interest in starting my own halau or dance studio and my love of facilitation. That's
cool. And you've had an interesting career too, because as part of your professional career, you've been in the marketing arena. You've worked with some very large companies like Pepsi and Procter & Gamble in the marketing world. But you've also kind of combined that marketing with learning strategies and other things, which is a good combination. Lord knows we can use more marketing and learning.
I'm sorry, Rick, I'm going to interrupt there.
Yeah.
It is the absolute best combination.
I forgot to tell you, Danielle, she's got a marketing degree too.
My background. Yeah, it is the best, because if you're in marketing, you learn how to communicate with people. You learn the importance of getting the senior folks in the organization involved. You also have to learn how to communicate with your fellow staff, your employees, all the people. So you learn all of that. So as well as communicating with your customers, you're communicating internally as well, and you become their chief translator. And that is what I tell people that my key skill is. I'm a translator. And I'm sure that is something that you could also say, yeah, that's what I do. I'm a translator.
Yeah, it's really taking those business impacts and making sure that you can communicate in the language the stakeholders want, which also applies to learning and development. Really making sure you can have the right benefits to sell in whatever you're proposing, or even selling that into the learner and using that really concise language.
Now tell us how you named your company, Beyond the Sky.
I started with the tagline first, actually. Never think the sky's the limit when there's footprints on the moon. And coming from that, thinking, beyond the sky. Beyond the sky, there is actually more to see and more that we all can achieve. So that was really the impetus for the company name.
It's a great name. I like that name. Yeah. It's good. It has a lot of connotations when you think of beyond the sky. I like that. What got you into the digital learning and the training part of things? You said when you were really little you liked the idea of the dance and how it facilitated things. What got you into the training arena? And by the way, tell us a little bit about your company while you're at it.
Yeah, so jumping from my dance studio that I started when I was 16, that really sort of fueled my desire for, hey, I like the idea of coaching people, training people, being an instructor in that sense. And then springboard that to the corporate world where I first started off with Procter and Gamble and then PepsiCo. Within those organizations, I had the opportunity to deliver training from the side of my desk. Those organizations have a strong commitment to learning and development, and they purposely pull from within their pool, especially at P&G, with their own internal facilitators training them to deliver. So I've started off from that on the side of my desk, also trying to create information and training I could share with my colleagues. That was always my drive. That was what I loved best. And I thought the higher and higher I got up in the company, the more I would have the opportunity to train more people or to coach more people. The reality is, though, I actually just had more profit and loss pressure. And like many stakeholders in the business, I wasn't able to focus really where my true love was, which was developing people. So left the corporate world and then started my own organization, Beyond the Sky Custom Learning. So for the past 10 years, we've been fortunate to work with some really great clients to create custom learning solutions.
That's great.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you actually say that you started off in dance, because to me, dance is all about vocational skills. It's practical skills. It's actually doing something. And my background is in what you call in the US community education. So again, it's vocational skills. And I think very often in organizations, and I would be interested to hear your view, they're actually undervalued. And I think we could be doing more with these vocational skills where you're actually getting people where people are learning to do something as opposed to pontificate about what will or won't happen with the profit and loss sheet.
Yeah, it really comes down to who those learners are. And what those segments are. So it's been interesting. I've been fortunate to work from a variety of different organizations with different capacities, some which are more hands-on and some which are more theoretical, so to speak.
Now, do you work only in Canada? Do you work stateside too, or other places?
Most of my work's in Canada. I do a little bit in the US as well. Great. Primarily focusing there.
So when you look at the learning market right now, or really where the learning is going, what do you see as some of the challenges, and where do you see things getting better?
So some of the challenges I think have been the same challenges, the underlying challenges that, at least from a Canadian perspective, that I've seen for the past 10 years remain the same. That everybody feels that they can do training. So subject matter experts also feel that, hey, I went to school. Hey, I can do training. I can throw up a few words on a PowerPoint and it'll be done tomorrow, which is the same challenges that we've been having all along. So foundationally, that's still this need to elevate the learning industry, and at least from where I see the landscape here, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. And that all couples into going up the steps of ensuring that learning and development has a seat at the table and is driving the right business outcomes and is valued for its work. So that I see as the overriding challenge that will continue to remain in place.
Because very often learning and development sits behind HR. And because it sits behind HR, it doesn't have a seat at that top table. And it's I used to explain this all the time, and I still do. I say learning and development is very different from HR, and it has a skill set of its own. and you need to develop
Absolutely.
that skill set. So are you
Yeah.
agreeing?
Oh, I completely agree. Yeah. And I work with different organizations where actually, to that point, learning development is separate, and there's amazing leadership, like the CLOs are just like a truly amazing. And the value that learning and development does bring in those organizations is very different than others who aren't as mature in that process, or just different organizational makeup, where learning development really is sitting behind HR, which is already sitting behind. So there's quite an opportunity there to help elevate the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is
So how
interesting
do you go
that.
about doing that then?
Yeah, so a lot that really drives on. Which also couples into some of the opportunities that are available for the learning development world. So really, it's foundational and so critical and obvious, but yet I don't see this all the time, that we all collectively as an industry, we deliver quality learning solutions. Period. So we actually can drive the business results that our learning solutions are tagged to, really ensuring that we're having that business focus from the start at all times, using that benefit focused language I mentioned earlier when speaking with stakeholders, when speaking with our learners, and ensuring that we are not just creating sizzle, hey, this is a really cool thing that's sort of fun, and we're not just creating a page turner, but that we're actually driving those business results in the work that we're doing. And then I've seen that. I've seen it firsthand in organizations where we're clearly able to take, and with measurable results, to actually provide the right organizational skills that actually makes a difference in the company. That in turn has led to the organizations understanding, okay, learning development, there's more here than I thought, and there's more here that they deliver. And there is hence a value for this as a function.
Are you finding that video is becoming a more integral part of the learning process? Because a lot of people are used to video. They're not that used to the learning tools, except for maybe some of the interactive portions of it. But video is big. Audio, of course. But do you find that video is making an impact right now?
Oh, yeah, I think video's made an impact for a while now. Which definitely we see with the statistics, the rise in the use of video, and the learners' just ease and convenience with it. We need to be mindful that it's truly effective as we're using it. I'm seeing it to the extent of different organizations feeling like, hey, we just put a video for everything. No. It all comes down to ensuring that we have the right structure, the right foundational objectives that we're meeting, again, tied to business outcomes. And then video may be one solution of that. It may not be, but it's really starting off with the right learning solutions to meet the business objectives, and then being able to think wide and think, great, a video can be effective. A recent example of that I did was with a learning solution to address some of the equality in this regards for women. And we used actors that we hired that acted out different scenarios, and you were able, through your interactions with this character and the story, see firsthand what this person was thinking in reaction to your own comments. So it really enabled, like, video was a fantastic way there to drive that empathy that we were trying to impart.
It's interesting because I was literally just about to ask you, as chief learning strategist and running your own company, the fact that you are a young woman as well. Have these, because I'm involved with the group that Kate Graham and Sharon Khalifi-Kubi are running, about how women matter in L&D. And have you come across personally? I haven't hit any of these walls, but maybe because I was involved in e-learning when it was in its infancy, so I kind of grew up with it. But have you been facing these challenges, or the people that you're working with, are they facing these challenges?
So in general, I'd say the learning and development industry is a very kind, inclusive industry versus some other industries I've been in. So it is very different than the marketing world, which I grew up in and know in depth, which is just a different environment. Learning development is much more inclusive, and there's much more opportunities for overall collaboration.
Yeah. And what about with your clients? Are your clients happy that it's a woman that's running the company?
I think in learning development, it's just a different situation where there is a lot more females in this industry, or those who identify as women in the industry, and it helps overall. I noticed just much more diversity. So within any teams and groups, we end up with some great discussions because people are different. So I haven't seen that in learning and development so much.
Good.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there are probably more women in L&D than other venues. At least it seems that way.
Well, you get two of them on today, Rick.
That's right. And it's sort of interesting, but I find that women in the field, for some odd reason, tend to do, and this is a gross generalization, I can't wait to get the hate mail, tend to do a better job. I don't know why. The attention to detail is better. They can be very creative. They have, for the most part, pretty good business knowledge when they get into it. And it's funny. In our company, we have more women than we do guys, and never really had any issues with quote unquote the womanhood of it all. Don't really care. It just they do good work like anybody else who does good work, and it just seems to work well. At one point, we had a lot of part-time moms that were working that just they love the field, but they had babies to take care of, and it's funny because people were saying, "Oh, you guys have done such nice work for them." We didn't think of it that way. They were available. We liked it, and we didn't mind, and they were doing their jobs really well. But it's interesting that if you can help in something like that without even thinking about it, it wound up being a good thing. And I agree, Danielle. I don't think there's that many glass ceilings in the learning world. In some other worlds, maybe. There's definitely in some areas. But we have a lot of clients that the women who run these companies, and they're big multi-billions, they're CEOs. So we're not seeing it a lot, but I'm sure in some places it's definitely probably a lot more. What's your experience been as far as, well, actually you said that already. Really, you haven't really had any issues with any of that. So from a learning perspective, how do you think people are reacting to some of they're not new trends, they're just relabeled trends of microlearning and other methodologies? Do you find that that's working better in today's everybody's in a hurry kind of environment? We got to train quickly. We don't have time to get into it. Just get it out there.
So I saw a lot of the microlearning trend 4 years ago when a lot of organizations were like, okay, great, we have to do this, but lacking the rationale per se. Again, it goes down to having the strong foundational learning solutions with the right objectives tied to business outcomes, and your learning solutions there are built upon. So today, fast forward today, I think the organizations I work with are more savvy in understanding that. And we do use microlearning for sure for different scenarios where it is the right learning solution, where we can have that single objective that we're imparting, like a single objective. And it's been fantastic for those. We've also taken those same assets and we've coupled those together to create more of a comprehensive program. One example is facilitation program, like actually how to facilitate, where the microlearning pieces were delivered through eLearning or through others were done through video, provided those snippets. Okay, great. I just need to know how to handle a difficult participant. Great. That's it. Single focus objective worked out great. And then coupling those all together into something more of a more comprehensive allowed people to pick and choose and create, in this case, their own tailored program about how to facilitate. Okay. Again, though, it's all back to those objectives and the right business outcome.
Yeah, that's a tough one, those objectives. Do you find that a lot of people, as they get into the projects, they start and it just depends. Usually it depends how much experience they've got in training. But the SMEs and other people often don't quite get what you're trying to do until they actually see it.
Yes, that does happen. And it's interesting working with different, it's actually really amazing working with different SMEs. This one project I'm working on right now, I worked with her 3 years ago. Back then, didn't quite understand what an e-learning was. Now, whew, she's amazing because they get it. Others, when they're new to the experience, we typically walk through it, but therein lies the value of a prototype.
Yeah.
Because it's truly through that prototype do people understand, oh, by e-learning, you mean this. I thought you actually just meant somebody was talking to slides in a recording. Like you actually get those enlightened moments, no matter how much you try to communicate. When they see it, they're like, oh, okay, right. That's what you mean. I was completely off. And it's very fun to help upskill people adjacent to the learning and development field as they are SMEs or such to understand what an e-learning is, what is a virtual class, what's a webinar. And like I mentioned with the other example of the subject matter expert 3 years later, oh yeah, it's such smooth sailing. It's great.
That's good. Lesley?
No, it's just interesting. I'm just interested in what you're saying because I don't know if it's the same in Canada, but in the UK, an SME is a small and medium-sized enterprise.
Oh.
So when people start talking about SMEs and SMEs in the UK, if you're not in the learning world, that's another thing that confuses people because different organizations have different languages and terminologies. Do you find that is the same in Canada and the same in learning and development in the world that you work in? Language and terminology is actually incredibly important.
Yes. So again, it comes back to two things. One, from a stakeholder management standpoint, ensuring that we as learning and development, we eliminate our jargon and learning and development, even that as a term. It's just critical we limit our internal jargon and save it for the learning and development peoples. It becomes so critical. And then secondly, it's just our overall use of jargon. Coming from the marketing world, there's so many concepts I know as like second nature. An ad idea, and which I translated that into, okay, how can I make that work for training development? Okay, I'll call it a video concept. So even myself, as I'm bringing in different techniques I worked in the marketing world and using those to create effective learning solutions, I constantly need to check my own jargon because by default, I have my own jargon that really nobody understands unless you're in marketing.
Yeah.
Now, do you develop?
But that's so common.
Now, do you develop you do the writing? Do you also do the development?
So the programming I used to, but now I've got a fantastic programmer. So then he's into all the scripting and can do way more than I possibly ever could. So I'm so fortunate for that.
Oh, that's good. Well, did you use any of the common authoring tools, or how do you develop usually?
Yeah, so we use the Articulate Suite and also Captivate.
Okay,
and those have been great. Yeah,
the standard ones. Everybody's using those. It's just common nowadays. We don't have as many authoring tools as we used to anymore either. So that's
things have consolidated down, and as we've gone from the world where everything was truly custom and we're just coding, we've been able to go. Industry itself has consolidated the tools that it's using, which helps honestly when people are trying to do updates to something. They may have the subscription or the software already, which is great, and just even from a skill development standpoint, it's interesting but beneficial that the industry has itself narrowed down, and there's still other cool new ones out there, which is absolutely awesome. But I've been able to be really focused on those, and it's been successful.
Yeah, that's good.
What about employee engagement? How do you encourage the? I know one of the problems I've got in learning is that people in L&D call them learners. Okay, everybody else in the company calls them colleagues or employees. The L&D or training department are the only people that call them learners. And very often you get the weird look on their face and going, I left learning when I left school or when I left college or university. I'm doing a job now. So
that goes back to the jargon you're talking about.
Do you find that as well?
Jargon, right? Oh, yeah. And again, that's back to our jargon. So internally, we say learners, we use our own jargon. We know what a learning objective is, where no one else cares. And there's these great tools and needed tools for us within learning and development. But again, going back to the stakeholders, it's so important that we eliminate the jargon that only serves a purpose for us. It's having that benefit-focused outlook and ensuring that in our communication that we're using, it's focused on the benefit of whoever we're talking to. They don't want to be told they're learners. It just goes back that it's the same key messages.
Yeah. Interesting. So what's next then, Danielle? What's next?
Yeah, we are fortunate to be doing some great, trying to push the needle more and more with different projects. So some that we're doing right now within this pandemic to really help people for the response, like actually to help some of the emergency responses. So trying to ensure that we've got like quality, effective, like it has to work. People have to be trained going into these operations. So focused on that on one side, and like high stakes, high stress, high visibility, it has to work. Like this is training where it truly matters on one side. And on the other side, trying to push the envelope into new and creative ways to deliver the intended learning objectives in a way that non-emergency related types of different projects where we can actually engage people in ways that they like and love what they're doing and are able to apply those skills to get better at their own jobs and better for their own personal development. So those two angles, one of like high stakes, it's got to work, period. And the other angle of like, hey, where can we push the needle? Let's just think really out of the box and creative on driving those business outcomes.
Now, have you found that you've had to start doing any training on working remotely, which all of a sudden now everybody's working remotely?
We actually created some working remotely project training pieces for our clients back in January, before all this.
Good timing.
That wasn't the intended outcome. Fortunate, actually, because they've been able to quickly deploy that to the other departments in their organization, which is great. And then other ones we participated in more opportunistically to help those who are working remotely. But we're so fortunate to have that longer start on, hey, now at the time, we actually had, the right time to create a really quality thing and include anything you possibly need, except any pandemic reference.
Right.
But it was truly meant to help people with that transition.
How do you think that's working for people working remotely? I've heard there's some good, there's some bad, because they've been forced to work remotely in situations where it's hard to work remotely, call centers and things like that. How do you think that's been working?
So my understanding is on balance is working well. The organizations I work with, and many of which have large call center populations, and the typical requirements of, thou must be in the office, period, from a safety, security, trust standpoint. These are the organizations that have publicly said that when we go back, we are not going back the same. We will always now have a large percentage that is going to be remote, period. We see now that we have actually experienced an increase in productivity. People are happier. They don't want these commutes anymore. So there definitely is that shift. And again, this is even for some organizations and even like literally call center employees who now have within the right security requirements are able to actually do their roles from home. And then on the other side, a lot of the organizations I work with, the teams were coming into the office, but more are very happy, I should say, not to come in every day now, not to come in at all. So for most of them, especially with the way things actually are in Canada, there is a lot of remote work. And if everybody across the country, there typically is not, no matter what industry, there typically is not physical offices in all from coast to coast anyhow. So people are used to that. Now it's more of a level playing field. So, hey, everybody's working from home, not just me in Vancouver type of thing.
Interesting. Well, Danielle, this has been fun. We are at the end of showtime, and we appreciate you coming on. We're going to have your information below so people can get a hold of you and go visit your LinkedIn site as well as your company site. And we appreciate it. We appreciate sharing some with you. Lesley, anything?
No, it's just been great to chat to you. It's just interesting to hear of somebody else who's come from a marketing background who's now doing e-learning. There's not actually that many of us about.
No?
No, there isn't. And there's so many applicable skills that we can bring forth, whether it's that focused communication and really having those benefit-driven messages to our stakeholders, our learners, or limiting the jargon that we use in everyday language. It's key.
Yeah.
That's good.
So it's interesting. It's good. Anyway, lovely to chat to you, Danielle, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon at some point.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Danielle. And if you're watching the show, please, if you have any comments, just put them down below on the video and we'll get back to you on that. And do visit Danielle's site and do visit Learn Appeal. Have a good one, everyone. Enjoy, if you're here in the States, enjoy the 4th of July. I don't know how enjoyable it's going to be. They've closed down a lot of parks again, so you can't do much. Go anyway. Who cares? Have a good one, and we will see you next week on eLearnChat. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.